have tried to discuss in this booklet in terms of four different parts. MSMEs being the backbone of the industry. Whatever Dr. H.P. Kumar has spoken, some of those has been covered in the booklet. And what are the current challenges in the economic scenario, as well as what MSMEs face on a day-to-day basis. And of course, various initiatives by both Government of India and the NSIC taking for helping the MSMEs for development. And we also touched upon the need for the credit ratings in the context of measuring the success on a relative manner, because you need somebody to say, you can't yourself say that I'm the winner, you need somebody else to say that as an independent opinion to say that how you are performing, so you require a credit rating. And finally, what we have done is, for the purpose of understanding the perspective of credit rating, we also given a case study how we do a credit rating, so that it helps you as part of your business model when you want to lay down certain road steps, you can use that. There are very interesting numbers if you look at MSMEs as such, as Dr. H.P. Kumar was also mentioning. Next to agriculture, it's the largest employment service provider. It has more than 26.1 million enterprises. Roughly around 90% of the overall industrial enterprises in the country, they are from the MSME segment. Around 60 million people who are engaged in the MSME segment. And out of the total manufactured output, there are more than 45% coming from the MSME segment. Of course, currently it contributes close to 8% of the GDP as well, and 40% of Indian exports. Don't you think that MSME play a very large role? Just give a pass here. This is current scenario, but what is the expected scenario? The Government of India has set up a very interesting mission. What they want to do is, the current level of GDP of 8%, they want to hike it to close to 28% of the overall GDP in the country. So from 8% in terms of composition in the GDP, they're expecting it going up to 28% of the overall GDP. And our GDP itself is going to grow. For example, by 2020, it is expected that our GDP will be almost more than 2.5 times of the current level. With a combination of GDP growing and also the thrust of the Government of India, almost close to 28% of the GDP, we are talking about 8 times growth from the current level. What we found is, in terms of a very high level challenges in the marketplace, the MSMEs, there are plenty of opportunities at the same time. Broadly, if I can classify, first is the access to the funds, where it is equity or debt or other types of financing. That's one area where the MSME, if they have to grow 8 times, for example, in 8 years, that means they also require 8 times of the funds what they have currently, which means there's a huge requirement of funds. And of course, the other large part is, because the size is small, they have to take on the challenges from large players in terms of technology or in terms of market penetration. There's a huge requirement to compete in the marketplace. We also found there are a lot of initiatives, as Dr. H.P. Kumar highlighted, that one of the biggest thrust from the Government of India is the procurement by PSUs to the extent of at least 20%. At least 20% of the MSMEs is a huge thrust area. How far it is going to work in the marketplace, what is going to be in terms of the way the ministry is going to handle this procurement policy, we have to wait and see. But if that assumption that if this policy is going to be implemented, I think that alone, as he was mentioning, that 140,000 crore of potential on a yearly basis, the contribution by MSMEs can happen by that single policy itself. It's a tremendous opportunity. From the current level of 20,000 crores to 140,000 crore, it's a huge opportunity coming because of one single policy. The other things, of course, MSMEs also are supported by Government of India, other initiatives like participation in the international exhibitions and upgradation of technology. Quite a lot of initiatives which are currently taken by the government as well as by NSIC, which is a nodal agency for developing the MSME business. So the second, again, the same question comes. Assuming that you have a huge opportunity and also good support from MSMEs, is that sufficient for you to be successful? We also covered a little bit on the sort of conceptual aspects in the booklet in terms of how, what credit rating, what are the processes that are used in the rating. For example, we say that long-term rating and a short-term rating. Whenever a credit rating comes out, a credit rating agency comes out with a rating, if it is for beyond a 1 year period, it's classified as a long-term credit rating. Whereas if it is less than a 1 year, then it is classified as a short-term credit rating. I would also highlight one important thing that when you are handling your relationship with your banker, you'll always find your banker is expecting you to service the debt on time. Suppose you have borrowed 5 crore rupees and your monthly or a quarterly installment comes to, let's say, 25 lakh rupees, and the due dates are each quarter ending like 30th, 31st March, 30th June, etc. It is expected that you are supposed to repay that payment on the due date. You will also find the bankers allow you to sort of give some grace period. Suppose even if you are not paying it on the 31st, they say that within within a reasonable grace period, they allow you to repay. From a banker's perspective, if you have paid the payment within 90 days, they don't call it as a default. They still call that as a standard asset. Whereas from a credit rating agency perspective, if there is 1 rupee default or a 1 day delay in the payment, it is classified as a default. So that's something which I want to highlight here, because as part of the financial discipline, if you have already funds and if you are anyhow going to make the payment, you better make the payment on the due date or prior to the due date rather than delaying and get the status of a default. And management, of course, we look at the track record, their ability to make the payment, the past performance in terms of making the payments on time, their qualifications, the team that they have built, the second level. So we all look at the overall quality of people, the governance standards which the company has put in place for transparency and disclosures, etc. And financial risk, of course, how the financial performance is in terms of whether it is interest coverage ratio or a debt equity ratio or net worth. These are some of these we look at. I just want to summarize here that in order to be successful in the business and also from a perspective of a credit rating agency, it's a continuous process. It's not one time that last year, as of 31st March, you had taken stock of your factors and then say that you are the best. But it's a continuous process. The first one is strengthen your business model, because there's continuous improvement is required in terms of whether it's a reach or a competitiveness or market position, etc. So the first mantra for you is to continuously strengthen your business model. The second is outperform your industry peers. Because finally, if you are good in your industry, there's quite a good chance that you are on the top of the chart in terms of the overall success factors. Third, of course, is currently you have a good management, you have good governance, but you also have to continuously benchmark what's happening in the marketplace and try to improve the overall levels on a continuous basis. And finally, of course, the financials is not only for today, but on a long-term basis, how far you are able to sustain the standard good performance. I think these are the, some aspects which are covered in our booklet, and I wish you good reading, and in case you have any clarification, we'll be able to provide you. Thank you.